my ex thought. She could break me by leaving me. Right after my dad died. Now she's watching me thrive from her mom's couch. It wasn't just the loss of my father that hit me. It was the sudden shift in everything that followed. My family, my world. They all felt like they were crumbling apart, like I was just holding on to the edges of something that was already falling apart. My dad wasn't just a father. He was my mentor, my hero, the person who believed in me when no one else did. Growing up, we'd sit for hours, him telling me stories about his struggles and triumphs. I used to look up at him in awe, and he'd always say, "The world's not going to hand you anything, but if you work hard enough, it'll give you what you need." He made me feel like I could do anything, like nothing could stop me. And it was always just us, me and him against the world. When he passed, it felt like the weight of the world had just collapsed on me. The funeral was a blur of faces and condolences, everyone offering their sympathy, but no one knew how to comfort me. I didn't even know how to comfort myself. The emptiness I felt in the pit of my stomach was endless. It was like a hole in my chest that nothing could fill, but I kept going somehow. I told myself I had to stay strong for the people who still needed me, for my mom, my siblings, even for the people at work who expected me to keep showing up like everything was normal. But nothing felt normal. Nothing could ever feel normal again, and that's when Mia started to pull away. At first I didn't notice it. She was there after the funeral, trying to be supportive. But slowly it became clear that something had shifted. Her texts were shorter. Her calls more infrequent. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it, the distance growing between us like a thick wall I couldn't break down. I remember one night, a few weeks after my dad's funeral, I asked her if she was okay. We were sitting in my apartment, the kind of quiet that fills the space between two people who are physically there but mentally miles apart. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said, but there was no spark in her eyes, no warmth in her voice. Just empty words that felt rehearsed. That night, I felt like I was losing her too. She said she was tired, that she needed some space to figure things out. I let it slide. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that it was just the stress of everything. But in my gut, I knew it wasn't just about my dad. Something was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong it would get. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I never thought I'd be the one asking myself why things were falling apart. But there I was, sitting on my couch, staring at my phone, waiting for Mia to text me back. It had been 2 days since we had that conversation about needing space, and my gut was telling me everything I didn't want to hear. At first, I thought it was just grief. I thought maybe she was just overwhelmed, just like I was. But as the days stretched into weeks, I started noticing the subtle things, the little cracks in what had once been a solid, loving relationship. It was like I could see the distance between us growing with every passing day. And the worst part? I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if she was actually pulling away. She started going out more. We used to spend our weekends together. Lazy mornings, coffee in bed, talking about everything and nothing. But now, she was out with friends, or working late, or just distant. Every time I asked her about it, she'd shrug it off, say she was just busy. But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't interested anymore. I didn't know if it was because of my grief or something else, but the more I tried to reach out, the more she seemed to pull back. One night, I had enough. I confronted her. We were sitting at my kitchen table, the same place where we'd shared so many of our dreams together. The silence between us felt heavier now, suffocating, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. "I don't know what's going on, Mia," I said, my voice tight. "You've been so distant lately. What's happening? Is it me?" She looked at me, but there was no warmth in her gaze. Just that same emptiness I'd seen too many times before. "You're going through a lot right now," she said, her words coming out flat. "I'm just trying to focus on my own things for a bit. I think we need some time apart. For both of us. Time apart?" I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I could feel the lump in my throat, the sting of tears that I wouldn't let fall. "I'm not asking for you to fix me," I said, the hurt seeping into my voice. "But I need you here. I can't do this alone." She didn't respond. Instead, she stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door without another word. And that was it. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just pulling away, she was leaving. Not physically, but emotionally. And I was too late to stop it. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I had seen the worst of it. But I was wrong. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Mia was slipping through my fingers. Her absence in my life was suffocating. It wasn't just the lack of texts or late nights at work. It was the way she stopped looking at me the way she used to. The way she stopped caring. I tried to keep busy, tried to distract myself with work, with friends, with anything that could fill the hole Mia had left. But nothing worked. Not when I was alone in my apartment staring at the empty space beside me where she used to be. Then came the message. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't open it, but something told me to. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a last-ditch effort from her to make things right, but it wasn't. It was a picture of Mia, in someone else's arms. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My heart dropped, my stomach twisted into knots. I stared at the screen, not knowing how to react, not sure if I wanted to throw my phone across the room or just shut my eyes and pretend it was all a nightmare. But it was real. Mia, the woman I'd trusted, the woman I had loved, was standing there in another man's embrace. And what killed me the most was the smile on her face. That same smile she'd once reserved for me, now directed at someone else. My hands shook as I set the phone down on the table. I couldn't breathe. I felt dizzy, like the walls were closing in on me. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I felt betrayed. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through. After I'd given her everything? But the message wasn't just a random photo. The message itself was even worse. I'm sorry, but I think this is what's best for both of us. You're still stuck in the past, and I can't keep holding myself back. I hope you understand. And just like that, it was over. The words that sealed the fate of everything we had. The apology that wasn't really an apology. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen in disbelief. It was like time had stopped and I couldn't move forward, couldn't move back. My mind raced, but no answer came. In that moment, I realized something. Mia wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving the version of me that had been defined by grief. She was moving on with someone else because she couldn't stand the broken man I had become. But what hit the hardest was the realization that even though she was gone, I still loved her. I was still holding on, and that was when I hit rock bottom. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I was at rock bottom before. But nothing compares to what happened next. The days after I saw that photo felt like I was living in a fog, every second dragging on as my mind replayed that message over and over. The truth was undeniable, yet it felt so surreal. Mia wasn't just moving on from me, she was moving on from everything I had been. All the love, all the support I had given her, all the times I'd been there when she needed me. None of that mattered in the end. To her, I was just someone stuck in the past, too broken to love. I spent a week in a haze, barely eating, barely sleeping. I called in sick to work more times than I care to admit, but I couldn't bring myself to show up. How could I? How could I face the world when everything in my life felt like a lie? I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of the person I once was, and wondered how I had let things get so out of control. Then, one night, when the weight of everything felt unbearable, my phone buzzed again. I thought maybe it was her, but it wasn't. It was something much worse. It was a social media post from Mia. It was the two of them, her new boyfriend, standing side by side in front of a restaurant, laughing, holding hands. It was supposed to be just a casual post, something lighthearted, but to me, it felt like a slap in the face, as if she was trying to rub it in, trying to tell me she had moved on, that she was fine, and I was nothing. I slammed my fist against the wall, the frustration pouring out of me in the only way I knew how. Anger. It was the only emotion left. But even that was fleeting. All I could think about was the empty space she left behind. I wasn't just angry at her, I was angry at myself. Angry that I had let myself fall for someone who would so easily walk away. Angry that I had allowed myself to be manipulated for so long. And that's when it hit me. I had been living in a lie. Mia had been slowly pulling away for months, and I had been too blind to see it, too lost in my own grief to notice the subtle signs. She wasn't the person I thought she was. She had never been the person I thought she was, but I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I wasn't going to let her be the reason I crumbled completely. I didn't know how, but I knew one thing. It was time to rebuild. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and there's something I've learned. Pain can be the strongest catalyst for change. After that night, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep drowning in the past. I couldn't keep clinging to a relationship that had long since faded. I wasn't going to allow Mia's betrayal to be the thing that defined me. I had to start over. Not for her, not for anyone else, but for me. It wasn't easy, though. The days blurred together as I tried to find a way to heal. I spent hours at the gym, working out until I was exhausted, trying to bury the pain in muscle and sweat. I had to stop thinking, at least for a little while. The weights, the treadmill, they were my escape. They were the only thing that kept me from sinking further into my own thoughts. But that wasn't enough. I needed something deeper, something that would force me to confront what had happened. So I started seeing a therapist. It wasn't easy. Talking about my dad's death, about Mia, about everything I had been bottling up. But slowly, I started to piece together the broken parts of myself. I realized that Mia wasn't the cause of all my pain. Yes, she had betrayed me, but I was carrying a lot more than just that. The weight of losing my father, the loss of my own identity in the wake of that grief. All of it had built up, and Mia's actions had just been the tipping point. In therapy, I learned something vital. Pain was part of the process. Grief wasn't something you could outrun, but you could grow from it. You could become stronger, even if it felt like the world was falling apart. I started setting goals for myself, small ones, like getting out of bed at a reasonable hour, cooking myself a decent meal, and going back to work. The first time I went to the office again, I felt like everyone was staring at me. But I forced myself to keep going, to do my job the best I could, to remind myself that I was capable of more than just being the broken guy who lost everything. And slowly, I started to feel better. It was subtle at first, a smile that felt real, a laugh that wasn't forced. And as I rebuilt, I realized something. I wasn't just healing from the loss of Mia or my dad. I was healing from the version of me that I had lost along the way. One day, while I was at the gym, I saw a familiar face. It was a guy I'd known from work, someone I hadn't seen in a while. He was doing the same thing I had done, working out, looking for an outlet. "Hey, man," he said, giving me a nod. "I've been hearing about the stuff you've been going through. I just want you to know, you're stronger than you think. I can see it." For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I didn't have it all figured out, but maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need to have everything figured out right now. I was on the right path. The rebuild was just beginning. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and there are moments in life where you think you're finally moving on, only for something, or someone, to remind you of the past. It had been a few months since I started getting my life back on track. I was working harder than ever, finding small joys in simple things. My friends noticed the change in me, too. I wasn't the same broken guy I had been before. I was healing. But just as I began to feel some semblance of peace, Mia messaged me out of the blue. I hadn't heard from her in months, and when I saw her name pop up on my phone, my heart skipped a beat. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something told me to read it. I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted closure. Or maybe a part of me still wondered if she was going to apologize, if she was going to explain herself. I opened the message. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know I hurt you. I don't know how to fix this. I miss us." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. I wasn't sure what to feel. Part of me wanted to throw my phone across the room in anger, while another part of me longed to hear her voice again. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't going to let this message break me. I typed out a response, taking my time. "It's too late, Mia. You had your chance. I'm not the same person I was when you left me. I don't need an apology anymore. I'm moving on." The moment I sent it, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me. I had spent too long letting her define my worth. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into the mess she had left behind. I didn't expect her to respond, but she did. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "I've been in a bad place and I'm not proud of how I treated you." That was it. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Mia wasn't the person I thought she was. She was someone who couldn't handle the weight of her own mistakes. And in the end, that wasn't my burden to carry. I turned off my phone, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. It was over. I was done. But just as I was about to move on, I found myself staring at my phone once again. Not at the message from Mia, but at a notification that made my stomach churn. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and there are times when life throws something at you that you're not prepared for, no matter how much you think you've moved on. After sending that last message to Mia, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt free. I felt like I could finally breathe again. I was proud of myself for standing my ground, for refusing to let her come back into my life and ruin the progress I had made. I didn't need her. I was doing fine on my own. But then that notification popped up on my phone. It was from a mutual friend of Mia's, someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. The message was simple enough, just a few words, but they felt like a slap in the face. "I heard what Mia did to you, but I think you should know. She was seeing someone else before she broke up with you." My stomach dropped. I felt the ground beneath me give way, as if I was falling into a pit of emotions I hadn't even begun to process. Someone else? Before me? It was like everything I had been holding together began to unravel in an instant. The idea that Mia could betray me like that she had already moved on with someone else while I was grieving, while I was still fighting to keep it all together. It shattered me. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. The words kept spinning in my head, repeating over and over like a broken record. But the pain of it wasn't just about Mia. It was about me. I had given everything to someone who never truly cared. I had allowed myself to be manipulated, to believe in a love that wasn't real. And now, this was the truth I had been avoiding. I had thought our breakup was about me. I had blamed myself for weeks, wondering what I had done wrong, what I could have changed. But now I realized it wasn't me. It was never me. It was her. It was Mia. She had never been fully invested. She had never truly loved me the way I loved her. She had left me, not because of my grief, but because she was already planning her exit. She was already looking for someone else to fill the space I couldn't. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, a whirlwind of emotions that left me breathless. I had known deep down that something wasn't right. But this was worse than anything I had imagined. For the first time, I understood that Mia's leaving had never been about me. It was about her own selfishness, her inability to deal with the consequences of her choices. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I wasn't going to let her be the reason I crumbled. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to realize just how much you've grown. That revelation about Mia felt like a punch to the gut. I thought I was done with the pain, that I had finally moved on from her betrayal. But hearing that she'd been seeing someone else while I was still grieving, while I was still holding on to the hope that we could fix things, cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the realization that I had been living in a lie. I had given her all of me, all of my trust, and she had thrown it all away without a second thought. I remember that night clearly, sitting in my apartment, the only light coming from my desk lamp. My phone lay on the table, the notification from our mutual friend still open. I stared at the words, feeling an emptiness that I couldn't quite explain. I had been so focused on surviving my dad's death, on putting myself back together, that I had missed the truth staring me in the face. Mia had already checked out long before I ever realized. But something shifted in me that night. As the shock wore off, I started to see it all clearly. I had spent so much time blaming myself, wondering what I could have done differently, what I could have changed to save us. But that was the problem. I was trying to save something that was already broken. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. The world outside seemed so far removed from the chaos I felt inside. But as I stood there, I felt a sense of peace slowly begin to settle over me. I didn't need her to validate me. I didn't need her approval, her love, or her apology. For the first time in a long time, I realized something important. I was enough. I didn't need Mia to complete me. I didn't need anyone to fill the void my dad's death had left. I could stand on my own 2 feet. I don't know how long I stood there, letting that realization sink in. But when I finally turned away from the window, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Strength. I wasn't going to let Mia's betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let her be the reason I stayed stuck in the past. I was moving forward. It was time to let go of her. Completely. The next morning, I woke up and made a decision. I was going to take control of my life. No more dwelling in the past. No more holding on to the person I thought Mia was. I was going to rebuild myself from the inside out, and I was going to do it on my terms. But as I started to gather my thoughts, my phone buzzed again. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and sometimes the universe has a way of testing your strength when you least expect it. After that night, I felt like a different person. I had made peace with the fact that Mia wasn't the one for me, and I wasn't going to let her betrayal haunt me anymore. I had started putting myself first, setting boundaries, rediscovering my passions, and focusing on my career. It wasn't easy, but every small step felt like progress. But then, just when I thought I was done with the past, Mia came back into my life. Again. I had spent the last few weeks working on myself, putting the pieces back together. I was busy. I had goals now, dreams that didn't involve her. I was happy. Or at least I was learning to be. But then I got another message from her. This time it wasn't just a text. It was a phone call. I stared at the phone for a long time before answering. My heart started to race. I knew I had made the right choice by cutting her off. But the moment I heard her voice on the other end, I felt every part of me that I had worked so hard to rebuild start to shake. "Mia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could already feel my chest tightening. "Hey," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "I know you're probably angry, and I understand why, but I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" The calmness in her voice almost felt like a knife, slicing through everything I had just come to terms with. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt, but I was confused. What could she possibly want from me now? She had made her choice, and it had hurt. "I don't think we have anything left to talk about," I said, my voice firm, even though my mind was racing. "I know," she replied, "but I need to see you. Please, it's important." I sat in silence, feeling the weight of the decision I had to make. Everything in me screamed to just walk away, to not let her back in. But there was that part of me. The part that had loved her. The part that was still broken. The part that wanted answers. "I'll meet you," I finally said, before hanging up without waiting for her response. The next day, we met at the same coffee shop where we'd had so many conversations, before everything had gone wrong. As I walked inside, I spotted her right away. She was sitting at a table by the window, her hands folded in front of her, looking smaller than I remembered. I took a deep breath and sat down across from her. "Why did you come back?" I asked, my voice steady but my heart hammering in my chest. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't place. Guilt, maybe, or maybe regret. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve that, but I've been thinking about you a lot, about us. I know I hurt you, and I know I can't take that back, but I've changed. I'm different now." I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted to hear her out, to feel some sense of closure, but I also knew I had moved on. I had rebuilt myself, and I wasn't going to let her pull me back into the mess I had worked so hard to escape. "I've changed too," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I'm not the same guy who needed you. I'm not the guy who thought we could fix what's broken. And I'm okay with that now." She looked down at her hands, her face flushing with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean for it to end this way. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to believe her anymore. The hurt had been too deep, the scars too fresh. "I know you didn't," I said softly, the last of my anger leaving me. "But I can't go back. I've moved on. And so have you." For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Mia and I didn't need to fix anything. We needed to let go, to walk away from the past we'd once shared. It was over. I stood up to leave, but as I turned to walk away, Mia called after me. "Take care of yourself," she said quietly. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I had already taken care of myself. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for the first time in a long while, I'm starting to feel like I'm living my life for me, and no one else. After the conversation with Mia, I walked out of that coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. It wasn't because of anything she had said. Honestly, I don't even remember her words that clearly anymore. But it was the moment I realized that I didn't need her to complete my story. For so long, I had felt like I was lost without her, as though the past had a hold on me that I couldn't escape. But in that moment, I understood something important. The only way forward was to leave the past behind. Over the next few weeks, I continued to focus on myself. I threw myself into my work, not out of distraction, but because I genuinely loved it. For the first time in years, I was feeling good about my career, about where I was going. I enrolled in a few personal development courses, things I'd always been too busy or too distracted to pursue. I started taking pride in the small victories, making new friends, having real conversations, even just waking up every day and feeling like I was finally moving forward. But what really changed was my mindset. I stopped living in the shadow of my past. I wasn't the broken guy who had lost his dad. I wasn't the heartbroken fool who had let a girl walk away. I was me. I was a survivor. I was someone who had taken every hit life had thrown at me, and I was still standing. The healing didn't happen overnight. I'd be lying if I said it did. Some nights, when the world was quiet and the weight of everything hit me all at once, I would still feel the ache of my dad's absence. I would still feel the ghost of Mia's betrayal. But I didn't let those moments define me anymore. I had learned to sit with the pain without letting it consume me. Then, one evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw something that made my heart race. A post from Mia. It wasn't what I expected. It was a photo of her with a guy. But this time, there was no smile on her face. No picture-perfect moment. The caption was simple. "Sometimes you don't realize what you had until it's too late." I didn't know why, but something in me stirred. Maybe it was the quiet realization that I wasn't the only one who had been changed by our relationship. Maybe it was the fact that even though I had let her go, there was still a small part of me that hoped she would one day understand the weight of what she had done. But I didn't need an apology from her. I didn't need her to regret anything, because in that moment I realized that my peace, my happiness, had nothing to do with her. It was about me, and with that, I turned off my phone. For the first time in a long time, I was finally ready to move forward, not just with my life, but with a heart that was healed, a heart that was ready to love again, in whatever way that would come. I wasn't sure where life would take me next, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I'm finally starting to feel like I'm living life on my terms, not anyone else's. It's strange how everything changed after I let go of Mia, after I stopped waiting for her to come back, to apologize, or to validate the pain I had been holding onto for so long. In a way, I had been stuck for a while, living in a loop where the past controlled my thoughts, my actions, even my happiness. But once I decided to truly move on, it felt like a weight was lifted, like I could finally breathe freely again. I threw myself into my work, but not because I was trying to bury my feelings anymore. It was different. This time, I did it because I genuinely cared about my growth. I was no longer the guy who defined himself by his failures. I was the guy who was learning from them. And slowly, something unexpected happened. I started to build a life I was proud of. I took up new hobbies, things I'd always wanted to try but never did, like cooking and photography. I traveled more, spending weekends hiking through forests, taking pictures of sunsets and just appreciating the beauty in the little things that I had once overlooked. My friends noticed the change too. They said I looked different, more relaxed, more present. I was happier, but it was a happiness that came from within, not from someone else's approval. I had become my own source of strength, something I had always relied on others to provide before. One night, about 6 months after the last time I saw Mia, I was sitting at a bar with a few friends, talking about life and what the future held. Out of nowhere, I got a text from her. It was short, simple, but it hit me hard. "Hey, I just wanted to say I hope you're doing well. I know it's been a while, but I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew what I felt. At first, I felt a twinge of nostalgia, a rush of old emotions. The part of me that used to care so deeply for her wondered if this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when she would finally admit how wrong she was. But as I sat there, looking at the message on my screen, I realized something. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her to fix what was broken because I had already fixed it. I had spent so long waiting for her to make things right, but the truth was, I had been the one who needed to do that all along. I took a deep breath and typed my response, knowing it was time to move forward once and for all. "I'm doing well. I hope you are too. But I think it's time we both let go of the past." I pressed send, and without hesitation I turned my phone face down. It was done. No more holding on to the past. No more waiting for closure from someone who could never give it to me. And just like that, I realized I had already found the closure I needed within myself. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for the first time in years, I feel like I'm truly free. The months after I sent that final message to Mia were some of the most peaceful I'd ever had. I focused on building the life I had always wanted for myself. I didn't need validation from anyone, especially not from someone who had walked away when I needed them the most. There were still hard days, of course. Some nights, I'd catch myself thinking about how things used to be, about the future I had once imagined with Mia, the way we had talked about growing old together. But those thoughts didn't linger long anymore. I had learned to let them go, one breath at a time. I had learned that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else but me. A few months after that last conversation with Mia, I met someone new. Her name was Sarah. She wasn't like Mia. She wasn't trying to fix me or fill a void. She didn't come with baggage or false promises. She was just real. She was kind, funny, and genuine. I wasn't looking for her, but she showed up in my life when I least expected it. The best part? She never tried to erase the past or pretend it didn't hurt. She understood the pain I had gone through, but she didn't define me by it. She accepted me as I was, without expectations. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let someone in again. Not because I needed them, but because I wanted them. I remember one evening, after a quiet dinner, we sat together on the couch, talking about life and the things that shaped us. She looked at me, and for the first time in a while, I saw someone who truly understood. "You know," she said, her voice soft, "it's amazing how much you've grown. It's like you found yourself again." I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. I hadn't found myself again. I had never really lost myself. I had just been hiding, too afraid to face the truth. But now, I was no longer afraid. I wasn't the guy who had been abandoned. I wasn't the guy who had been betrayed. I was someone who had been through hell and had come out the other side stronger. I was someone who had learned that sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. I didn't need anything from the past anymore. I had built my own future, and it was one that was mine. All mine. This is where my story ends, but the journey is far from over. The best part? I know now that no matter what happens, I'll be just fine, because I've learned that the only person who can break me is me, and I'm never going to let that happen again.